friends. Welcome back to another episode of Once More with Feelings. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Beth. And we will go over movies, music, and whatnot. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do whatnot. Whatnot sounds bad. Just media?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're just doing media. It could be anything, really.
Yeah.
Mostly movies. Let's face it. We're doing mostly movies.
Mostly movies.
But music will happen.
It will, eventually.
So no whatnot.
Well,
although whatnot is bound to happen at some point.
There could be some whatnot. There will be hijinks.
Right. Or whatnot.
Or whatnot. There could be shenanigans even.
There's wherefores, there should be whatnots. So that's what we're going to do. But this podcast is about delving into the feelings behind or in front of
or
the movies or media that we ingest, the things that we watch, the things we listen to, and how it relates to the world around us.
So this time we did a classic. And maybe it's not a classic in the general term. It was no Citizen Kane.
It's not a highbrow classic.
No. But Bachelor Mother, starring Ginger Rogers and David Niven. This was a 1939 movie. It was obviously black and white. And it's
not
small.
obvious to everyone.
Okay, well, it was black and white. This came out of RKO Studios, and it was directed by Garson Kanin. It is considered a romantic comedy. It is cute. It is a cute little movie.
I didn't get much romance.
It was a very fast romance. I mean, the movie's an hour and 7 minutes long, so it's not like... Yeah, it happens fast. I mean...
This movie is more about the assumptions of almost everything.
Everybody assumes everything.
Yes, the assumptions run this film as if writers weren't involved.
Yes, even though this movie actually has a pretty... It's got a history of being redone over and over in different forms. We'll get into that when...
I think romantic comedy kind of says that.
Yeah.
Because they do tend to be formulaic. And even when they're not, they have to go against the formula, which is buying into the formula.
Yes. So this movie came about as we were trying to figure out a holiday movie for New Year's.
Yes.
And it was literally the first thing that popped into my head. Yes, we know there are other movies that have New Year's Eve in them. This is
and
weirdly,
eventually we'll cover them, but not this time.
Not this time. Yeah, I adored this movie the first time I'd seen it. And I saw it many years ago in Turner Movie Classics.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was like a late night.
Well, you saw me. I've seen this movie half a dozen times in my life, and I was still laughing.
Oh, yeah. No, there are some funny lines.
Do you want the IMDb?
Yes, please.
Let me do that, and then you form your thought, because
Yes.
I know you're ready for something, and you're just gearing up. So,
yeah, well.
IMDb states, Polly Parrish, a clerk at Merlin's department store, is mistakenly presumed to be the mother of a foundling. That would be an orphan child.
Yes.
For those who don't know. Outraged at Polly's unmotherly conduct, David Merlin becomes determined to keep the single woman and, quote, her, end quote, baby together. That's it.
That's it.
I mean, that's concise. I think that actually does. You've seen the movie. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
I mean, it's basically, yeah, that's the movie.
There are a lot of assumptions. Assumptions run this film.
Oh, yes.
Keep that in mind as we go along, because you're going to have to assume a lot as well.
Yes. And again, a lot happens in an hour and 7 minutes. And 1939 is when the movie was released. So think about, you got to look at it with historical lenses and not modern lenses, because there's a lot of issues. But okay, Ginger Rogers. Now, I am unfortunate to say that I can't remember ever watching a Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire movie. I've seen Fred Astaire movies and I've seen Ginger Rogers movies, but I've never seen them together, which is silly because I did grow up watching musicals. But she was in Follow the Fleet and Top Hat and many, many, many more movies. Her acting career started in 1929. Now, David Niven, on the other hand, he started his in 1932. And most people know David Niven as Sir Charles Lytton from the Pink Panther movies.
Who doesn't?
I've actually never seen a Pink Panther movie.
Are you serious?
Yes, I've never seen them.
We have to watch them. They're, to me, Mr. Bean. What everybody loves about Mr. Bean, in a way, is what you're going to love about Pink Panther, but maybe a little bit crazier.
Mm-hmm. And the other actor there's a couple other actors, but the other one I wanted to mention is Baby Johnny. He was played by Elbert Copeland Jr. He'd only been in like one other thing, but I really couldn't find the name of it. It mentioned it like in one place, but then it never mentioned it again. So I wasn't going to like write it down. But this was his big role. He was 8 months old. His father was a chemical engineer, I think is what it said. His mom was a stay-at-home mom, and they had open auditions. And Garson Kanin, what he wanted was, he didn't care if the baby was funny or well-behaved. All he wanted was a photogenic baby. Though he did believe that a crying baby was a sick baby. I don't know why that was a little tidbit that came through.
A little weird, but okay.
It is. We have the assumptions in this movie that are hysterical. But this is one of those ones that I don't mind us going a little step by step through it. Polly Parrish works for Merlin's department store, and she sells Donald Ducks. And Ginger Rogers had to wind those Donald Ducks constantly to keep them going. So that was one of the things I noticed, that it was like she was the one keeping those stupid Donald Duck dolls going. He is the uncredited character in the whole movie.
And I'm not sure that it's exactly Donald Duck.
I know, but it did say that it was an uncredited.
Yeah, and it does have the sailor outfit. It is duck. It is duck-like in many forms.
It looks like old Donald Duck.
I'm going to say what they say in an episode of Firefly. I'm going to harken back to the Firefly if we're going to harken back to 1939, which is that it looks like someone made it based upon a rough description of a duck. After never seeing a duck themselves.
Yeah, that's about right.
Paraphrasing,
again,
course.
Very old Donald looking. So she works for this department store, and she finds out that she's being let go. And on her way...
Well, she finds out because they place their record books on the tables, and it's just got it on top saying, hey, you've been let go.
You've been let go.
Thanks.
Don't let the door hit you. And so on her way home, she sees an older woman dropping a baby off on a doorstep of an orphanage.
Right.
And she's like, don't leave your baby there. The woman's like, it's the best baby ever. And
says it's not her baby.
But it's not her baby. And she leaves.
Well, she's an older woman.
And she is
probably
an older woman.
A grandmother.
Yes. So as Polly goes and investigates the baby, the door opens and a woman ushers her and the baby inside. The first assumptions are made that she is the mother of this child. She is not. But while she's preoccupied with the baby, they ask her critical questions to prove her motherhood of this baby, like, what is your name and where do you work? Because that proves she was his mother.
Well, she's not paying attention.
No, she's not.
And they're asking her the questions, and she doesn't realize that they're documenting it for the baby.
Yes.
And that is where this movie goes into a lot of sexism.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of assumptions, like we said. Assumptions are kind of necessary. The ignorance of people are kind of necessary. It really does play into the powerlessness a woman has at that time.
Oh, yes.
In which they are not believed, no matter what they say. And, of course, there's no way to disprove paternity at that time or prove paternity.
They could have done a blood test, or something.
I mean, they could do a blood test, but that's not going to tell you that that's the mother. It's only going to tell you that they have the same blood type.
True. Again, but there was still not much delving into her.
Proving that you are the mother is easy. You say, I'm the mom, and no one wants that child, so therefore you're the mom. But proving that you're not the mother is apparently much harder. And
apparently.
All jokes aside in this thing, this is the way she gets roped into being a mom. And throughout the movie, you see her not getting any attachment to this baby, yet loving this baby out of this magical nothingness. It's another assumption.
Well, but she did say at one point that when they were saying, well, this is your child, and she's like, oh no, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right, with a husband and everything,
Right.
So she never, until like the benefits start to appear before her, she doesn't actually say that's her baby. She keeps telling people, no, that's not my kid. Then she leaves. She leaves the baby with them, and she's like, I'm out of here. This is not my kid.
And this is where the Foundling Association, what is it? The Foundling something or other, very annoying.
Yeah.
Foundling Home. This is where the director, I'm assuming, or doctor, or just random guy inside who thinks he knows more than everyone else.
Yes.
Has decided he's going to take it upon himself to go to her work, her her former employer.
Yes.
And say, you need to give her a job back. She has a child. What is wrong with you?
And they do. They do.
Not they.
They. Yeah, not they.
David Niven's character.
David Niven's character.
Which is Bob.
Which is David.
Bobbert Do Re Mi. What?
David Merlin.
That's what I said. David Merlin. Huzzah.
David Merlin, who oddly has a British accent, but yet Charles Coburn, who plays his father, J.B. Merlin, does not.
He was brought up in...
Macon, Georgia.
No. David Merlin was brought up... that was the boarding school
that J.B. sent him to.
In London until he was 84.
Until he was 84.
And then he moved back here.
I have a love for
and
Derek.
Became the 84-year-old son of a 75-year-old man. Actually, I'm betting that his father is only about 40.
I honestly didn't look up how old Charles Coburn was when he played the part, but yes.
It's a cocoon situation, people. Well, going to be 40 years old. You look like you're 80.
Yes, well, I mean, David Niven was born in 1910 in Roger Waters. Ginger Rogers. My brain, y'all.
You just tied that into a music scenario.
I know.
I didn't know we were doing that.
Ginger Rogers was born in 1911.
Right.
And
Freddie Mercury is there.
Freddie Mercury is there. No, I was going to say, and completely unrelated, my great-grandmother was born in 1912. So there we go, 10, 11, 12, run up to the other.
So that's how you correlated that?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, she gets her job back, and then before all of that comes into play, we have Frank Albertson as the douchebag Freddie.
Okay, he's
a douche.
He is a douche, but he's a douche in the way that all men are douches at that time.
Oh, yeah.
He is kind of sniveling, conniving, and doesn't really seem to have a good plan for anything.
No.
All of his plans seem to fail, and he's only had 2 plans in the film.
Yes, and that one was to get a promotion, and the other one was to get into Ginger Rogers' pants.
Actually, the first one was to get $50 for a dance contest that he was going to cheat on.
That's true, he was.
And they didn't even do that right. They got first place, which is just a trophy she kept on her mantle for the entire film.
That's true. Because they had to have Ginger dance.
Twice.
2
scenes in which she had to dance, and I'm sure that was in her contract that she had to.
Well, I mean, again, as much as history and actors love to talk about, the Fred Astaire's, the Gene Kellys, and my grandmother's personal favorite, and most people don't realize was a great dancer, Sid Caesar's. The thing about Ginger that they always say, and it is the truth, is that she could do it backwards and in heels.
That is the thing they say about Ginger.
So that there's that one famous dance, again, while I have never seen a movie with them in together, but I've seen their dance scenes, and there's this one where they're dancing and they're going like up over a chair and off the chair. And,
yes.
And she's wearing that. I would have stepped on those pant legs so many times. I can't even tell you. Because they were big and flowy, and there were ostrich feathers at the bottom, and I would have fallen.
You can probably thank the dance choreographer who had the whip in the chair.
Oh, that's true.
That might be lion taming.
That was one.
Same thing, though. Same thing.
Yes.
Back then, that was all the same issue.
So enters our buddy Merlin, and he is just like appalled that she would go out dancing.
Well, we have to set it up. He is kind of a playboy.
He is a playboy.
Not really. They really kind of tone him down.
Really quickly.
Well, I mean, his
dad.
his, quote, playboy issue, end quote, I'm doing a lot of quotes right now, is that his father thinks he needs to get more sleep. Because he's staying out till 10.
10 o'clock.
I know. So,
I mean, that's late for us. But,
yeah, but I mean, they only allude that he parties.
Yeah, that's true.
And they don't really say he parties that hard. He
did. Like
he did untie his tie.
And at the New Year's Eve party, he does say how all of his friends are half human, half wolf. Like, meaning they were just
Yes, but this is their version of it, in which someone asks her politely to dance.
That's true.
And one of the women is a little snide.
Yes, but she gets her, that comment about her shoulders was pretty good.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's as wild as they got.
That's true.
No one was doing cocaine off of each other's backs.
Oh, that's true. It wasn't really that wild of
It'd be a weird thing to do it off the back, but you know what I'm saying.
So, oh my Lord.
Okay, so we are a little loopy because we've seen a very short film which doesn't have a lot of substance but has a lot of heart.
It really does.
And because of that, we're trying to find the emotional discourse within the film for us.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, it is funny. It's a funny film. Mm-hmm. There are times where I'm laughing. Mostly it's a cringe fest.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're looking at the sexism and the things that are inherent to the times of 1930s anything.
Yes.
Is kind of pointing out the fact that, well, maybe these people were a little bit too much for the Nazis at the time.
Well, funny you should mention Nazis.
Here we go. I knew it. Hitler's in the film.
No.
Oh.
So,
he wasn't in the background?
In 1944, David Niven, he served in the British Army, and he was at the Battle of the Bulge. And he was going through an area where Americans were doing checks because of German soldiers trying to sneak through. And one of the soldiers asked David Niven, who, to prove that he was an ally, who won the 1940s World Series. And David replied, "I haven't the faintest idea, but I do know that I made a picture with Ginger Rogers in 1938. So
there you go.
And they basically and they were like, yeah, okay, Dave, go on, just, keep your nose clean,
He slapped his chest when he said it.
Bitch, at me, bro.
You have to give it to him. He's very cute, man.
He is adorable. But that was cool. And I thought that was kind of a funny little tidbit. And the story is not the deepest.
I mean, the IMDb does say it pretty much all.
Yeah. It's
not a deep thing. She gets suckered into caring for a child.
Taking care of a baby.
The child has no agency, but he has even less agency than her, which has no agency. There's a lot of people that have no agency in this film.
Yes.
Even the douchebag has no agency in the film. He's trying to get ahead, and he gets fired within an hour.
Yeah.
Because he was doing his job.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe a little bit exuberant, but he was doing his job.
He did come flying out of nowhere and tackle David Niven to the ground.
True, but at the time, that was acceptable, I think.
Yeah.
Not for your boss, but for a shoplifter.
I guess so. And he didn't know that he wasn't shoplifting. And you're right. Think about it. When she gets the baby, first she tries to hide it from her landlady, thinking that she's going to lose her little, one-room apartment.
Yes. Her room within the house.
Yes. And turns out that the landlady was like, oh my God, I love him. He's a cute baby.
But she's the minority because any other landlady would be like, you cannot live here with your single
mother
self.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, with a child. How dare you? And then, they burn her at the stake.
I mean, the fact that she lets David Niven come into the house basically unescorted.
Not only unescorted, she's not even there when he comes in.
I know.
He's sitting in her room.
With the baby.
While waiting for her to come home, and then she comes home to find him there and doesn't scream bloody murder.
And he actually witnesses Freddie trying to get some at the door, he's like, just, why don't you invite me in for a drink? And she's like,
Then
I
a
don't
smoke.
and I'm surprised that
Baby, it's cold outside.
exactly what I was thinking. I was like, oh my God, was this song written for these two idiots? But David Niven, well, David Merlin, he gets all like indignant about her leaving the baby and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, it's not my baby. And he's like, well, you need to be responsible for your blah, blah, blah. And now you're out here partying. And is this what modern mothers do? And all sorts of stupid shit. She keeps the baby because
it is her lack of agency.
Yes. And she does keep the baby because, well, she's not going to keep her job if she doesn't. And
forced into motherhood.
Forced into motherhood to keep
situation.
her job. Yet he keeps coming back. He comes back with gifts and he comes back with a book. And,
I don't even think he understands, as the character is written, I don't think he understands that he's attracted to her.
No.
At first, and then he starts building it. But it builds very quickly. This is a very simplistic movie. It's not going to delve very deeply on an emotional level for the characters.
Yes.
You have to find that. We have to find the emotional attachment.
Oh, yeah.
And where I found it was, despite all the things that she's having, all the responsibility she's having placed upon her, is that I can understand her feeling, well, I'm just going to do it. Yep. I'm just going to do it because this is the only thing I've got. When you have no other choice and you have no agency, the only thing that you can do is make the best of your situation. And that's what she's doing because she has little choice. They've already said that there are no jobs to be found.
Yep.
She works in a department store. She literally has the skill to wind and sell ducks. Only ducks. If they bring raccoons in, she's screwed.
And this is 1939 New York City.
New York City?
You would think there'd be more jobs.
I think I was supposed to say that with more of a twang. New York City. Is that better?
Sure. But you're right. It's the men in the movie making the decisions for her. They're telling her that that's her child. They're telling her that whether or not she gets to keep her job. They are the ones who determine whether or not she marries any of them. So
yeah.
Later on, it's New Year's Eve, and he gets stood up because he didn't call back his girlfriend or whatever the heck she was.
Not a girlfriend,
but a friend who is a girl.
An acquaintance within their friend group.
Yes, and so he's like, "Oh, who am I gonna bring to New Year's?" And he's like, "Who do I know? Oh, I know Polly," and he comes and visits her. He doesn't even he just shows up at her doorstep.
Right.
And he's like, hey, you find the babysitter, I'll bring you the clothes. And he has the security guards bring her some high-end fancy merch because she was like, you're dressed in a tux and I have what I have. And
he starts getting the sizes of all her clothes.
I know.
While she's out of the apartment.
I know, what a creeper. But
it's just weird.
She's dressed beautifully in that beekeeper.
Yeah, she has the whole beekeeper thing. It's a mink. It's a mink coat with
like a tulle gauzy veil that kind of goes over it,
but not over her head so much as around her head,
like a halo,
wrapped like a bubble, like a beekeeper. Mm-hmm. And I do think she'd be okay with bees.
I mean, probably. And so they go to the party, and she's nervous because this is like high-end people here, and she's a clerk.
It's further pointing out the class situation, which we've encountered.
Definitely.
I mean, if you look at this movie, I kept finding parallels to a newer TV show, not much newer, mm-hmm. but Are You Being Served? It's all about the class. Yeah, it's all about the class system, mm-hmm. where women find themselves are also within that class system, still without agency.
And then she even loses her agency even further because she's panicking about that. And he's like, don't worry, don't worry. And he tells all of his friends that she's the Swedish daughter of some merchant that it just came to America and doesn't speak English.
She speaks no English. So they start speaking
really
words.
Bad made up Swedish.
Well, fjord was a word.
I mean, yes, and Sven was a
Sven.
name. She ends up dancing with one of his buddies anyway.
Most of the night.
Most of the night. Doesn't get to eat any food because she's too busy out there dancing her little full feet off.
And Merlin is sitting at the table.
Pouting.
But not knowing what to do, so he just kind of sits there.
And just watches. And she comes back and she's like, I'm hungry.
Cutest part of the movie.
Yeah.
This is, to me, the cutest part of the movie. She sits down.
Uh-huh.
She can't speak English, supposedly.
Yes.
So she holds up one of the party favors.
In front of her face.
Horns in front of her face and says, I'm starving. And he goes, and he's got his up in front of his face.
Yeah.
And he says, well, we can go get something. And she goes, I don't want to leave, though. And he goes, oh, well, then we'll stay.
Yeah.
And she goes, but I'm hungry. It was adorable.
It was.
That was an adorable moment.
And then as they're walking out, the girl that he kind of stood up but then turned around and stood him up, he's like, so what did you think? You know, like, look at her. What do you think of her? And she's like, I would have gone stag. And Polly turns around and in English, perfect, goes, with those shoulders, you could, you know.
Which was funny, yeah.
It was funny because then Merlin laughs his full ass head off.
All the way out the door.
It wasn't even that funny. It was just his high-pitched giggling, cackling out the door.
But that's one of the few moments in the movie you could tell someone really loved someone. Mm-hmm. Just, you know how you meet somebody and you're just sitting there and you don't have any feelings whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And then they do something that's just adorably cute. Mm-hmm. And you go, that's somebody I like.
Yeah.
You know, that's somebody, that really just emotionally attaches me. Well, at that moment at the table where they're talking about being hungry, mm-hmm. for me is the point where I think David Niven's character, David Merlin,
yes,
falls in love.
Well, yeah, because he was watching and then like the whole back and forth with them. Yeah, no, that was definitely,
I think that's when he falls in love. And I think his laughter was a key to that.
Oh, definitely.
It was like he was laughing his way out of the place because he was infatuated with her at that point.
Yeah. And what that scene that follows only proved to me was that New Year's in Times Square has never changed.
It's still a bunch of drunks.
Doing conga lines, singing Old Lang Syne, which is, that's about right.
Yeah, but they get separated.
They do get separated.
And you can see the worry on both their faces.
Mm-hmm. But then the bell, the clock strikes midnight. And
the bell
bells ring.
The bell tolls.
The bell tolls. And they find each other in the crowd. And they kiss. And then he walks her home.
And it's a sweet moment.
And then he says, it's midnight. And she says, wait a minute. And he goes, in Chicago. And they kiss again. So it was sweet.
And that was a good line.
It was. So let's do some trivia really quick, and then I will come back to the rest of the story. We'll get sued for that one, won't we?
Probably. No one's listening to this. It's fine.
Okay. So, like I said before, this has been done in many different ways. In 1942, there were many radio adaptations by the Screen Guild Theater. And the very first one starred Lorraine Day and Henry Fonda. And then in 1956, they did a remake of the movie but they called it Bundle of Joy. And that starred Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher.
Right.
Which is my beloved queen, Carrie Fisher's parents.
And I did see that film.
So
not when it came out. I'm not that old. But I did see it when I was a child.
Yes, and I have such a deep love of Carrie Fisher. So
it's not as good as this one.
I've never seen that one.
I don't think the Remakes is good.
Does it lose something in the 1956 era?
I think it does. They still both lack any deep feelings or emotions or storyline in both films.
Okay.
I think this one's funnier.
Now, do you think that, again, I've never seen the other one, so do you feel that, being that Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher were married, that they had more chemistry than David Niven and Ginger Rogers? Because honestly, I really just didn't feel chemistry between them. Other than, we're doing a movie together and we're supposed to be in love.
I think the thing that I'm missing from the Bundle of Joy film is the spontaneity, the feeling of spontaneity. You don't get that with them because They know each other. You feel that.
Yeah.
With David Niven and Ginger Rogers, I feel that they both have a spontaneity of emotional sparks. So when it does happen, which is few times, because you get no sense that they care for each other
No.
at all for half the film.
They pick on each other.
Right. But when it does happen, you're like, oh, this makes perfect sense.
Uh-huh.
And those are the little bits, the part at the table that is really emotional, and it's right there in the moment. But after the moment, you're like, is this going to continue? I didn't know. And then you see they get lost, and then they have to find each other, and then you're like, oh, they do care.
They do care.
It's the lack of writing. I don't think it is the lack.
I mean, these are two good actors.
Yeah, it's not the actors.
It's
not
just
their
the lack
issue.
of maybe direction or idea.
I think it's the time. I don't think that's what they were looking for. I think
they're just telling a cute little story.
I think they wanted a cute little story. They didn't want to get too deeply involved
that's
in
true.
anything.
And I think we've just gotten so used to movies that have such depth and character.
That's what I want, though.
You want that.
That's what I want. That's my personal preference, is to have deep emotional attachments to individuals within a film that I can root for or revile.
Mm-hmm. Early on, when she's tired of arguing about being the mother. Yeah, it was David Niven. He's asking her about the baby's father.
That's Mr. Merlin to you.
Mr. Merlin is talking about... No, he's not. He is Merlin Jr. Mr. Merlin loves that baby.
Mr.
From
Merlin
the
Jr.
minute
to you.
He sees him. So...
Because he looks just like him. A big fat baby.
So she makes up lies and says that she was abused by the baby's father.
Hit her with a tea kettle.
Hit her with a tea kettle.
Right here.
Yes.
In the place where there's nothing.
Nothing there.
And he goes, oh my God, that's terrible.
So, I mean, and then she, like I said, and then she lies about the baby to keep her job. Through the whole entire thing, so in the beginning, like when she wants to go out dancing with Freddie, she brings the baby to Merlin's house, and she's basically dumping the baby on him. And that's why he ends up back at her apartment with the baby.
Right.
But this makes Freddie think that the baby is Merlin's. So when later on he thinks that Merlin is shoplifting, which he's not, but it's a little bit of a convoluted thing, and you got to watch the movie. And to a certain degree,
there's some shoplifting.
Yeah, there's some shoplifting, but he owns the store. But
his father owns
owns the store, and Freddie didn't know that it was Merlin. He gives the father, JB, a letter, and the letter is so
he has a kid deliver it.
Bad. It's so bad. He's like, you stuffed shirt, your friend.
It's filled with mistakes.
It's so bad. It's
showing
done on purpose to show how low
his lack of education.
Yeah.
How low his class is.
So that letter, I guess, convinces JB.
Because we believe everything.
Everything.
Except the people who tell you not to believe other things.
Exactly. So he follows Merlin to the park. And David is there to see Polly and baby John. And
then there's this whole water scenario.
Oh, God, it was so weird. Everybody
the water sequence, I'm not sure why. That was the sequence.
I don't know. It was like it got carried away, and they were just like, you know what? We need to fill some extra minutes in here, so let's keep it.
I really don't understand. Perhaps the people that were having that...
They might have thought it was funny.
I don't know. I really don't understand.
But I don't always get the
scenario.
comedy of the early movies, because things that other people found funny were to me repetitive and or too slapsticky for me to be able to get, because I get that secondhand embarrassment.
Feel like slapstick?
Wasn't slapstick. It was just one of those drawn out scenes that to me just maybe a 1939 audience would have been like, ah ha 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 ha, but I was not.
I did not get that. It didn't do anything for me. There wasn't a funny bit. I was like, what is happening here? Really, it just kind of like missteps the movie. So it's like you're on a roll. Mm-hmm. You're waiting for the grandfather to show up because you know that's going to happen because he's been following him.
Well, he's not the grandfather.
The grandfather of the little baby.
Well,
he thinks he's the grandfather.
Yes.
Merlin Sr. follows Merlin Jr.
Mm-hmm.
to the park. Then the water scene happens.
Yes, with the water fountain.
Then the snarky conversation, which is fine.
Yeah, that was
because
fine.
it kind of establishes her
defending John.
Well, yeah, defending her baby, you know,
Yes.
because now she has this feeling of onus, this feeling of ownership.
He's my baby. Yeah, that conversation was also weird because the one woman's like, well, how old is your baby? And they're like, oh, this, you know, he's 7 months old.
She doesn't know, so she says 7 months.
And she's like, oh, well, mine's 6 months and he is the same size as yours. And my doctor says that my baby is a perfect specimen and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, you know, snarky bitch moms at the park, you know,
of everything.
And that's something that's never changed. Because even in modern times, oh, he doesn't walk yet? Oh, well, have you tried doing blah, 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 blah? You know, so it's just the same. That shit never ends.
But it does break up the movie, and then suddenly they're in conversation mode again.
Well, it was funny when she says that he's been talking, and he's not a talking baby, and that he had been talking for a month, and that he had said something that morning. And so she tries to get Merlin on her side, and he's like, oh yeah, he can recite the first line from Gunga Din. It's like what the hell did you pull that out of?
Such a weird lie.
I know. But then Merlin Sr. shows up and he's like, I'd recognize that chin anywhere, and he thinks he is the baby's grandfather. And then that kind of starts the ball rolling into who's the baby daddy. So Polly starts to get panicky because she's now thinking they're going to take the baby from her.
Who she's suddenly attached to.
Yes. And so the landlord or landlady, she says her son will pretend to be the baby's father.
Who is Sir now appearing in this film.
I know, because he was not. And
he comes out of nowhere. He's clearly a student. Mm-hmm. He's clearly got his books on a table and glasses. Studying. So you know he's a student.
And he's smart.
And he says, I'm not a lawyer as I study here for my obvious lawyer duties. However, this, and this. Mm-hmm. And the landlady is like, why don't you pretend to be the husband?
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, I don't know. I'm just a theater major. No, he doesn't say that.
No, but yes. But then wait, doesn't Freddie pretend to be? No.
Yes.
Yeah, he says
Merlin goes to Freddie. Walks right into his room. Again, this thing of not having boundaries and bosses just walking into their subordinates' rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, no one owns a house. I get that. It's New York.
Yeah.
But you don't go just walking into someone's apartment. It's very weird.
Very.
I mean, they're not apartments. They're rooms.
They're rooms.
They have
they're lit
bed.
Rooms and yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, he convinces him to do this, who is all too happy to do it for the guy he hated 5 minutes ago. But, so they all rush over at different times, Ginger Rogers and Theater Major.
Yes.
They both go to talk to Merlin Sr. And then Freddie's there, and he's like, no, I'm the baby daddy. Well, they don't know that they're there. They walk in, past them, and they've already convinced Merlin Sr. that Theater Major is the dad.
Yes. But then Freddie comes in with Merlin Jr.
Right.
And then they're like...
They don't notice that Ginger Rogers and the other lad are there. They just walk past them and say, look, this is the dad.
Yes. And
now he knows the jig is up.
And Merlin Sr.'s like, wait a minute, what the holy hecky, Becky? Because now we got multiple baby daddies here.
Dirty rats. I don't know, something.
And then really what it comes down to is everybody is dumb. And the baby is probably the smartest character in the whole movie. Rest in peace.
Keeping his mouth shut.
Yes. Rest in peace, David Niven. I love you, but your character was stupid. And then he proposes to her and they live happily ever after. Except my favorite line is...
Well, he proposes to her after Merlin Sr. goes back and forth, up and down, all through the house, trying to find her to take the baby away.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah. And she hides.
Badly.
Yes, because the duck gave it away. That damn Donald
Yeah,
Duck.
so the duck, which is, the magical device that
Stupid duck.
it's the MacGuffin. So.
It really is. So earlier on, and I wasn't going to
No,
get into this, but it's
MacGuffin.
kind of important because otherwise the line is lost. But she has one of those toy ducks that she's trying to sell, but she has one for the baby, and Merlin winds it up too much and it breaks. So he says he's gonna return it, exchange it for another one, and she goes ha ha, and he goes, what does that mean? And she says, well, we don't. That's just not going to happen. And he's like, are you saying our exchange department is wrong, is bad? And she's just like, they don't exchange anything. He's like, I can get them to exchange it. And she's like, well, yeah, because you are the owner's son. And he's like, nope, I will come in disguise. And he does. And needless to say, he can't get them to exchange it, which is why he loses his shit, goes and takes another duck. And that's why Freddy tackles him, because he thinks he is a shoplifter, words. And so through the whole entire, and that's how Freddy lost his position that he had for 15 minutes. So it's that whole ha ha thing. So,
which is apparently the floor workers.
They all kind of do that.
Ha-ha.
Yeah, because when he's going to go and exchange that, and her coworker was like, ha ha. So at the end, after she says, I'll marry you and everything, she's hugging him, and she goes, so do you still think I'm John's mom? And he says, yes. And she goes, ha ha. And that's how the movie ends. So,
which is, it's what she had.
Yeah.
It's the agency she had was to say, I'm not, even if I marry you, even if we raise this child.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't birth the child. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's again, it's one of those, you gotta suspend your belief because it's not realistic, but it's still sweet. And that was the thing that could kind of get away with movies back then was, we want more realism. Even in our romantic comedies, we want there to be realism. And back then, you could have somebody basically find a baby on the street and be forced to raise them.
Yeah. So this is after the split, when Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, I don't think they had a problem with each other so much as they just wanted to do different things.
Yeah.
So Ginger wanted to take a break and do a wider variety of genres, not just dance films. She wanted to do other things. And Fred Astaire wanted to work with a wider variety of partners. He didn't want to be typecast into just him and Ginger. He wanted to do other things as well.
Yes.
So this was the first film after the split to be released. They would reunite 10 years later for the Barclays of Broadway.
Huh.
That is when they would get back together.
Okay.
For their professional performances. So I thought that was interesting because it's like this was like a palate cleanser for Ginger Rogers.
Yeah. I think she did a horror movie too. I mean, granted, it was like a 1940s horror movie, but something The Shriek, but I didn't write that down. So, I mean, she tried to do different genres. You're right. She was attempting. But again, David Niven, his career pretty steady. I mean, he did.
Well, they were all steady at that time.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Ginger and Fred had been working for years. I mean, this is like at the peak of Ginger's career.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, this was RKO. So I believe at that time, that was when those studios owned you still.
I don't know that they had that much ownership anymore. At that point, you couldn't write your own ticket, but you had leverage now.
Yeah, I just think that wasn't other studios could borrow actors?
Oh, they definitely could.
Yeah, so
and they still can to a point.
That's true.
But yeah, I think that, without getting into the minutia of the entertainment industry, which is fraught with mazes and minotaurs and yeah, it's worse than having a small child kidnapped and then you have to go find it and then you get a Goblin King who puts his crotch in your face. Yeah, it's bad. So
those droopy leggings. So when I first saw this, again, it was just that late night feel good. It was sweet. It was kind of what I needed at that moment to watch that movie. And just, and then rewatching it, I still enjoy it. I can, again, tear it apart, But how does it make me feel? I think it makes me feel, I don't know. There's really no, because it's not like a hopeful or, it's,
It's trite.
it is trite.
It doesn't have a lot of substance to it. But what it
No.
does have is it has, I don't know, it's
It's-
funny
it
without
is.
having to think.
Yeah, it's definitely a mindless entertainment movie.
Because I'll tell you, when I first saw this movie, again, I was young.
Mm-hmm.
That's how most of my things start out, unless watching newer
I
movies.
think I was in my 30s when I saw this the first time.
I would see this playing on Turner
Yeah, Turner Classic Movies.
Classics. I think back then, though, it was called Solid Gold. It was not the show. I'm talking about the movie hour. It was like Solid Gold Movie Hour or something like that. And it was not a Ted Turner thing, but it was very much like it.
Okay.
Like TMC used to show all the time. And, which is Turner. But
Yeah.
yeah, but they showed the black and whites and stuff. And then for me, a lot of that was background.
Yeah.
So I would see parts of it. So I've seen parts of this movie when I was a kid. And then later on in life, I saw it one time all the way through. And I'm like, this is a lot shorter than I remember it.
Yes, again. It's
And
very
even
short.
tonight, we rewatched it. And I'm still thinking, that's a lot shorter than I remember.
You do remember it as much more, but I think it's because you want to connect more dots.
I think that's what it is. I think you're putting more content into it because you're kind of writing that fanfic in your head.
Oh yeah, and we know nothing about these characters. We know nothing about their hobbies. We just know that from what Freddie said that he knew Polly could dance, and that's why he wanted her to do the dance competition with him. That is literally the only thing we know about her outside of working at Merlin's and now having a baby that she didn't give birth to. We don't know really much about her at all.
Oh, there is no outside.
There's
only the
yeah.
job. There's
Yeah.
only the people she's involved with from the job.
Yeah.
There is no other life. You do know from what she says, there's no one to go back to. There's no family.
Yes.
So we can assume either her parents are dead or they've just owned her. I don't know.
I mean, so like, let's just like throw back to While You Were Sleeping, and
Yay.
Sandra Bullock's character, just looking at her apartment, even if there were no throwbacks to earlier intro storyline, you could see she has an apartment with personality. It talks about who she is,
Right.
what she likes. And you don't get that with Polly. Polly's bland. She's got an apartment.
Well, you're
that's
talking
not,
about a time in which you didn't get to have those things.
I mean, granted, yes.
You saw the douche's bedroom.
Yeah.
Was literally a bed, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Even the Merlins, very blank areas. They just had seating, and then you move from one room to another, and it's like moving through boxes.
That's true. I mean, and that's like the whole studio.
I mean, that is a studio thing. But what I'm saying is, you don't get a sense of it because that is what was required for those movies back then. You just didn't see a lot of style or those personal items inside the rooms with them.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get a sense it was lived in. It's kind of like their accents. You don't get a sense of where they're from.
No.
You have to imagine they're from somewhere else.
Well, yeah. I mean, and while Charles Coburn does do a upper crust mid-Atlantic kind of an accent of I'm a rich New Yorker, it does not hearken to his background of being from Macon, Georgia. And, and again,
Right.
David Niven having a very proper British accent does not hearken to the fact that he is the son of a New York
But this is the
mogul.
problem with that time in which they were producing movies that all sounded the same,
Mm-hmm.
is that you didn't get a sense of anyone's identity.
No.
Their identity was entirely wrapped up in the 5 seconds that they talked about themselves. While you know about Polly is that she can't go back to the place she was from.
Exactly.
And you don't know why.
No.
You have to invent that. You have to fill that in. I think that's why we think the movie is longer.
I think so. And the stereotyping. The landlady, Miss Weissman.
Who's adorable.
Adorable. But you can tell that they were trying to go for the Yiddish grandma-ish.
I thought they were going for Italian grandmother.
See, I don't hear that in her.
I don't hear any of that in any of their voices. I'm saying,
but
that's the most I got from it.
I guess I thought of like, my upbringing. I thought of the Yiddish grandmothers. Right. She's if they are going for that, they're going for that. I don't know. It's very when you put it, if you start to really, really think on it, it gets a bit icky. And I'm trying to not think about it because it's an enjoyable movie. But again, you can't look at it with modern lenses because you will.
Well, I really don't like the modern lens theory. I'm going to look at it with modern lenses because it's the lenses I have. If I look back and make allowances for the sexism.
Oh, not saying to make allowances for it, just knowing that you can't change it because it's already happened.
Sure, but you can't change anything because everything's already happened.
But can we learn from it?
Right.
That's
so
the
I
key.
Can't ignore. I have to look at it through modern
I'm just
lenses.
saying, not to judge it for what it is. I mean, you can judge it, but don't judge it in the sense that you have to condemn it.
I'm not looking to destroy the film. I don't have that kind of power. Second of all,
I tend to destroy what I love anyway. I do tear it apart. But that's beside it.
Far too gay for the straight couple to really affect me that much. But what I am going to say is there are cute moments in this film.
The baby is cute.
That make me. I found the baby distracting. I'm going to say that.
Huh.
I found the baby distracting because he only popped in a few times and you're like, oh, there's a baby involved in this. He's a plot point.
But I do like how she kept reminding him about the baby.
I know, but he's a plot point.
I know he's a plot point.
He's just he's a mechanism for the things to happen. But other than that, he's not needed. If you took him out of the film, you could still have the romance.
True.
So he is not needed for the plot.
They wouldn't have gotten together without him.
I don't know why they wouldn't.
They didn't even know each other.
Sure. They worked in the same department store. Eventually, he may have run into her.
Maybe.
I don't know. But what I'm saying is that child is a mechanism for the movie to happen. It's not a requirement because it could have just written her to run into him.
I mean, literally could have been a puppy dog.
Any kind.
Yeah.
So it could have been anything. And when the child shows up, it's a big part, and then suddenly he's gone. Mm-hmm. And you don't see him for a while, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot there's a baby involved.
Yes.
And then when she gets really emotionally attached without having any emotion attached, it's weird.
Yeah.
I really love this baby a lot. And that's it. That's all you get. You don't get any depth of like, I'm gonna save you, baby. It's none of that. It's just like a moderate care. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's a Ginger Rogers thing or if that's a direction thing or if that's just the way movies were done then. But a modern lens, to me, is required to look back at this and say it is a sexist thing. It is a misogynist thing.
Yeah.
It is a classist thing. It is ableist thing.
Uh-huh.
There are a lot of things that it is.
Yes.
But it's a trite, cute film.
Oh,
so you can look past those things because you're not going to affect anyone involved in that movie by disliking those parts.
Yes.
There was no rampant racism. Got to give it that. But then again, they avoided that by having
a very white cast.
Nobody in there that could be... Yeah, there's no one other than white people.
Unless they were going for the Yiddish grandmother thing. And if that was the case, then you can say that there was racism on that level. And the fact, like I said, the stereotyping. He's going to school. Because if you look at her son with his, they just made them look very Jewish. To me.
I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be a Jewish look that they were trying to affect between the two of them, or if it was a Mediterranean look.
Maybe it was Mediterranean just to make it not.
I couldn't get a sense
But
of either one.
again, I was going by my own background. So my background knowledge made me think that they were going for a Jewish look.
And my
the
background
fact
had
that
nothing to do with this. I just thought for some reason it was Mediterranean.
And that she is the landlady kind of gives you that whole, the way people perceive Jewish people, especially back then, that they were, them trying to get, it was always about the money and I'm not even sure if I'm even like explaining this where I don't sound like I'm being racist, but that's how it felt to me. But I do
That's valid, because these are all very ambiguous.
It is very
You don't
ambiguous.
get a sense of where anyone's from or what they're actually about. You only get a sense of their here and now. This movie is like when a dog would make one, because dogs live in the moment. They have no real perception of past or future.
Yes.
So this is like a dog made a film.
Yes.
It is all very right now. That's why these movies back then always seem like they're very like harsh,
Yes.
rushed. Like they always move quickly. They're always doing something right now. It's because there is no past or present with these films.
No.
They're very right there. They're right at the moment. And if you blink, you've missed it. Mm-hmm. And I just figured that out in my head as I'm talking about it right now. This is not something I formulated early on. This is just something I just made up out of nowhere.
Well,
Do not believe me.
so you're saying that the baby's not in the movie very often, and that's true. Mr. Birdie, their little Elbert Copeland Jr.
John?
Yes, John. He only worked 2 hours a day, and his mom and dad made $75 a week for him to come and work.
That's like 5 times as much as they would have made dancing.
I know.
So that's the thing I was going to ask you. The child. Usually they don't credit the children in these older movies.
I don't think he was credited in the. I didn't see. So this was, unfortunately, the old movies, they show the credits in the beginning of the movie,
Right.
and then it just ends. And I wasn't thinking to look in the beginning of the movie when we watched it. I actually just found it in just my research.
But I'm surprised you even found out who was involved.
I know.
Because typically they won't have any record of who the baby was.
A lot of these roles are uncredited.
And usually they work them pretty long hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of refreshing that they only worked him a couple of hours.
Oh yeah, knowing how long they usually work their actors, it is definitely refreshing that they only made that baby work 2 hours.
Right. And I think that with the child being named, first of all, is the actor himself being named is kind of cool. It's not usual that you find that.
Now I don't know about what happened to him, like later on in life, and all any information I could find said that he got married and had children, and that was it.
Oh, good on him. That's good enough, right?
But like it never really and there was an obscure movie, but again, I only saw it one time, and when I was looking for it again, I couldn't find it again.
Okay, I'm going to say this. I'm going to fill this out for you. I'm going to make some fanfic. I'm going to tell you who this guy is and what happened to him. Okay. Let me set the scene. So he starts dating this woman. He gets married to her. She becomes older and a little obsessed with becoming older. So she starts taking this potion.
Oh, for fuck's sake. It's on the list. Well, we will watch Death Becomes Her. Stop.
So in the end, he dies married with a whole bunch of children, and everyone loves him, even though he was the milquetoast between these two battling aging women who hated each other. And we can really go into the themes of that movie because there's a lot playing behind the scenes of that movie.
Yes, but that's when we get to Death Becomes Her.
Yes, yeah, I know. I just wanted to fill something out for you, for this character, this person.
You're making, baby fanfic of little Mr. Elbert.
He dies happily ever after with a whole bunch of children and a huge, large family.
He married a woman named Jo.
Aw.
Jo Perry.
Well, I love Jo.
And, and it says he was born in 1938, which makes sense. But they were filming in 1938.
Yeah, well, he was only like 6 months old.
It came out in 1939, and no, he was 8 months old when he filmed.
Okay.
He was a big baby. Not
a small baby.
No, not a small baby. And
he was eating oatmeal.
He got 3 teeth while they were filming.
Well, I want to understand why she kept going from food, hard, like baby food to bottle.
Well, babies under a year old will still do both.
It's weird to me that you only ever see the bottle later on.
No, it's just...
Like, there's not a bottle there. Every time I fed my child, I had the food, and I had a bottle right there.
I don't know. I guess, again, it was just
a weird thing I saw about the movie.
She was also dressed to the nines, sitting there feeding him, sitting on a couch.
Crazy. And the robe she wore.
Oh my God, that quilted robe.
That quilted robe, it's more luxurious than anything in her apartment.
I mean, yeah.
I have to believe that was Ginger's robe, and she just didn't want to get out of it.
I want that robe. It looks so warm and cozy. Well, the movie, it's feel good. I don't have deep feelings for it. Like, I don't have like existential, like in the other movies that we have spoken about, where I had definite deep thoughts about it. I don't.
What would have made this movie, and this is, again, I'm writing fanfic. What would have made this movie, to me, deeper, mean more, and maybe not have a quote satisfying ending, is if she turned him down and chose to go her own way with her child, the one that she's decided to take care of.
Yeah.
And find her own agency, because ultimately all she did was trade one prison for another.
True. And I want to know what happened to his parents. Especially his mom. I want to know what happened to the baby's mom. I don't know why. Because what's his real name? It's not John. That's the name she gave him. I want to know what the name his mother gave him.
This is back when they didn't have to worry about a social security number.
I know, but it really bothers me that I never knew what this baby's name was, and that we don't know.
No birth certificate, nothing.
Nothing. And like, why did his mom leave the baby with that woman? And why... I can understand, not having the dad there and whatever, but did mom die? Was mom a prostitute? Mom, did she get murdered? I mean, what is going on? Why did that baby end up a foundling?
It's kind of always funny to me when people say, I can understand the father not being there.
Well, because, I'm sorry.
Because it sounds a lot to me like, I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at, whatever it might be.
I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying I can understand in the sense that I'm forgiving.
No.
I'm just saying that...
I'm just making the joke.
I'm not saying all men, but what I'm saying is men are it's easier for them to walk away from their children than it is for a woman to walk away from hers.
For
and
many
I'm
reasons,
saying that because of experience, not only from my own children, but from my own childhood, multiple times with other stepfathers and my own biological father. So in my personal myopic experience, men leave. And it's easy for them to go and, hey, I have children, but I'm not there with them.
I don't think it's myopic. I think that you are using
my own personal experience.
Justified reasons
so,
for why.
Again, not forgiving and not accepting. I'm just saying that's a fact I see as men aren't always there. They walk away. So that I can see as being part of little John's background. But I'd love to know what happened to his mom. I really,
No,
I'm not saying that all moms are good moms, but it takes a lot to take...
Could be that she died during childbirth.
It could be that. But I'd like to know. I don't know why it bothers me that I don't know.
Yeah, but this is a movie you're not going to know.
I know.
There's no way to know this. We can't research that.
I know we can't. And again,
we can't even find the writer and beat him up to get the answers.
Dick.
He's been dead for years.
Oh, he was dead the whole time.
No, it's a horror film.
No, yeah.
So, I know this is not the part of the show that I want to do this, because this film. Okay, we're just going to do it.
We're going to do it.
So we're going to go over the Castellini test to determine whether or not women or feminism itself is being adhered to. Not adhered to. What am I saying here? Is
it feminist?
Is it at all within the feminist realm?
Mm-hmm.
Is there equity in this broadcast? Okay, so this is going to be fairly quick. Number one, there have to be at least 2 named women characters with at least 5 lines of dialogue each.
Okay, so let's see. We have Polly Parrish.
She has 5 lines of dialogue or more.
We have Miss Weiss, the landlady.
I'm trying to think of if she has...
Yeah,
she does have more than 5 lines throughout the film, yes.
Because they talk about the baby.
So that's step 1.
And we also have Louise, which was the date. And Mary.
She did not have 5 lines of dialogue. So we have the 2. For number 1, it passes.
Mm-hmm.
Barely. Number 2, those characters must have a conversation, not necessarily with the other woman. Either not about their partner or with their partner, future or current, and not about their relationship.
Well, Polly and Miss Weiss, they talk about the baby. Whole conversation about the baby.
If this test determines that there's feminism in this film, I'm going to be furious.
I don't think it's going to pass the third part. But I will say, I think squinting sideways, we can sort of accept number 2 as a positive.
Okay. They do have a conversation about the baby, so therefore it is not about their partner or their future partner. Okay, number 3, at least one of the women has to be integral to the plot, meaning that if she... God damn it. This is going to...
It is literally the Bachelor Mother. How did this pass?
I don't understand how this is passing. The women in this film have no agency.
They have no agency, but without Polly, there would be no movie.
Okay, let me read it out. At least one of the women in this film, has to be integral to the plot, meaning that if she were written out of the film, it couldn't reach the same ending. Yeah, there's no way around it because she is integral to the plot.
I'm still calling it a fail. I'm still. I know it passed.
It doesn't. Okay.
I know it still passed the Castellini, but the Castellini is not considering agency, and again, it's an old movie.
This is a guideline.
It's a guideline
for us to go by. It is not necessarily the determiner of all things. And
yes.
Brie Castellini, who developed this, would say absolutely it would not be. I'm speaking for her in this, but you can go to her link, but in our bio, and see for yourself. She's pretty brilliant.
That's uncomfortable. That kind of makes me a bit uncomfortable.
The women have no agency.
None.
And we can say we're viewing it through a modern lens, but back then they had no agency.
Yes.
The only way that Ginger Rogers had agency is because she had the power behind her films.
And she had the ability to dance.
Well, and let's face it, she had agents who could press people for...
Yes, because they saw her and her talents and saw dollar signs.
Kind of guaranteeing they were men.
Oh, definitely were men. There were no women in charge, yeah.
So these women did not have agency in this film. There's no way there was any feminism going on here. There's no equity at all.
None whatsoever.
She was roped into caring for this child. She developed feelings for this child out of nowhere. But that doesn't determine whether that was right or wrong. That is only a byproduct of the wrong act.
Exactly.
So I'm getting upset here over a trite film. But
it's just frustrating that it's passing, but yet it's not. It's passing on paper, but it doesn't really pass when you watch the movie.
It's passing, but it's also not going to pass.
It's not going to pass, no.
Because there's another, there's a fourth rule here. Because we said so. The fourth rule is because we said so. It's not going
to pass.
And that's okay. It doesn't have to pass.
Yeah, again, like
it can be a good film and still have a lot of flaws.
Yeah, again, suspend your personal beliefs when it comes to the lack of any type of equity between the men and the women, but it is a sweet little story.
What I love about a film is when someone tells me just take away all logic and reason And it's going to be a great film.
You'll enjoy it. You just got to like take away everything that you're going to hate about it because you'll love it otherwise.
You just have to remove all your morals and set it off to the side, and then you'll be fine.
Exactly.
It's like watching a murder flick. You're not going to murder a bunch of people, but you still think Freddy is being pretty funny when he claws everyone through the bed.
I mean, people like those kind of movies and are not out there killing people either. So they're taking their morals and putting them aside. Yeah.
They are.
I mean, yeah.
If
you can do it for a horror movie, I think you can do it for Bachelor Mother, you know?
True enough. I did it for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh,
burn. Sorry.
Burn.
It fails the test because we say so.
Yes.
Not because it failed any particular point.
No.
But because no test encompasses everything.
Exactly.
And we have to use our own sense of equity and what's right. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Still a good film.
Yep. And
Still
if you want
funny.
a nice little lighthearted romp through the past, go for it. I recommend it.
It's a part of our history.
It is.
Something to be watched and understood. Oh, one of my favorite quotes in the film is from David Niven.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Merlin.
Mr. Merlin.
Mr. Merlin Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Any motorcycle cop that can afford to turn down a $100 bribe must be in some crooked racket. Don't you think so? And I'm like, right on, white man. Right on.
Right on, white man. And David Niven is kind of the whitest white of whites.
But even he knows you can bribe a motorcycle cop unless he's got a bigger racket going on.
Exactly.
So, given that, we want to thank you for listening.
Yes.
To this ramble through The Bachelor Mother, which is going through the New Year's.
Yes. So Happy New Year.
Yeah, it should be playing through the New Year. So welcome to January 2025.
Yes.
We're happy you're here. We're happy you made it. We have a long slog ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, I'm going to say it, 4 years to go. Let's hope it's 4 years.
We're going into an odd number year, which always freaks me out. I'm always do better in even number years.
So stand together, stand firm, and I hope that everything that you need is provided and everything you don't need is something that's still attainable.
Just, look out for each other out there. It's really what it comes down to.
You only have each other.
Yep.
So rely on that.
And we would love to hear from you. So please never hesitate to reach out and leave a comment or a question, or if there's a movie that you would like us to watch. If you have any questions, if there are any movies that you would like us to watch and just, you want to say hi, shoot us an email at omwfpod@gmail.com. And we are on Blue Sky and Instagram at omwfpod. And we will leave some updates, rando pictures, ones that have to do with the show. Don't forget to like our picture of our patron saint, Alice Drummond, who is yet once again not in this movie.
That we know of.
But yes, we can't wait to hear from you because we kind of live for this stuff. So have a great rest of your week.
And have a great new year.
Yes.
Well, how'd you like her?
She's not bad for a fill-in. Personally, I just as soon go stag.
You could too with those shoulders.